fantastic day so far. I am checking in from the city of Istanbul, Turkey. This is an incredible place. It has so much energy. I would say it's somewhere between New York City and Mexico City in terms of just the density and the scale. I'd say in terms of the scale of how far the city reaches, it's similar to Mexico City just because the city just keeps going and it's divided between both the European side and an Asian side. But there's just so much to do and so much to see. And luckily, at least the tourist attractions are concentrated in Sultanahmet, where you can see the Hagia Sophia and the Blue Mosque, but otherwise there's just so many different neighborhoods to explore and they're all very spread out. What really stands out to me about this city is that it's a perfect representation of East meets West. That you had so many different great empires and civilizations live here. For example, like the Byzantines occupied the space in the form of Constantinople before the Ottomans came in and renamed it Istanbul. And you see that in the Hagia Sophia, which is one of the most unique spiritual places of worship I've ever been to, knowing that it was the most prominent church in the Orthodox faith, the Orthodox Christian faith that is, before the Ottomans came and repurposed it to be a mosque. You have all these Islamic adornments that you would expect in a mosque, but then recently, through some of the restoration efforts, you also have some Christian icons that are seen throughout parts of the building as well. And it's, for me, it created an interesting sense of dissonance, seeing both juxtaposed in one place. But what really stood out to me is knowing that there's been such strong history. I mean, the Hagia Sophia has existed for since the 500s AD, so it's been standing for over 1500 years, and it's just so apparent to have that contrast between the two religions that have used that space. The Blue Mosque similarly was extremely impressive with the tile work. It's called the Blue Mosque because the tiles are predominantly blue. I mean, there's other colors as well. There's over 20,000 tiles that adorn that mosque, and it is truly a marvel to behold. It's really beautiful inside, and I'm really grateful to have been able to experience all of the effort and time that it took to create that beautiful space. Now, during the tour that we took to go through the Blue Mosque and the Hagia Sophia, we also went to the Basilica Cistern, which was a place to store water throughout much of the Byzantine Empire, and it's existed for over 1,000 years. And that was just a really, really interesting space to walk through, knowing that the columns inside have stood there for so long, and now we're walking through it, but it used to be completely full of water. And our tour guide was telling us a little bit about how, given the ideal location of Constantinople, it was a place that went through a lot of warfare and turmoil and attackers coming in, and a major way that you would do that is by trying to cut off the water supply. So it was interesting walking through the cistern, knowing that it was a point of conflict in being able to cut off the water supply so that you could take over the city. It's a good reminder to never take for granted the ability to stay hydrated, since that's something we all need, especially for myself while traveling. I'm in Taksim Square, and I just stopped by the cultural center that houses the Opera House, and I mostly came here to check out the library there. That was really cool. And as I was walking through, there's a book about the bazaars, and I would be remiss if I didn't share a little bit about my thoughts on walking through those, given the importance and the history there. I mean, the Grand Bazaar, for one, is massive. It's like a city in and of itself, and it's absolutely sensory overload walking through there, but it's the largest covered market in the world to this day, even though it opened in the late 1400s when the Ottomans conquered Constantinople. And so just knowing the history there, it's pretty cool walking through despite all of the different stimulus, and at times it does feel a little bit like a tourist trap, given that if you want to buy something there like some spices or some baklava or some tea or some rugs or jewelry, you have to bargain your way down significantly. And I believe that it's primarily tourists that shop there. But I will say as well that the Spice Bazaar was structurally beautiful. I loved looking at ceilings there, and it's significantly smaller, but just knowing the history there, walking through and feeling kind of the importance of all the trade that's happened there over the last 500 years was a really cool experience. while I personally can't admit to being a foodie, I do love food, I do love eating, and I do love Turkish food. So being here has been paradise for me, because I love kebab, just some good meat and some vegetables. That's typically all I need. And just the way that they use spices here is on another level. There's so many varieties of kebab, from the Adana kebab and Iskender kebab, and then there's these chick kofta, which is like these raw vegan meatballs, which is delightful. Everything here is amazing. The hummus, the mezes, which is like an assortment of appetizers you can get. Eating here has just been fantastic. I did not prioritize doing a food tour this time, but in returning to Istanbul, hopefully one day I absolutely would. You can really see that Istanbul strategically benefited from being in this particular location at the cross section of the Silk Road, because just the flavor, incredible. And also, not to mention, the desserts are great, the pastries are great. I've been eating way more baklava than I would like to admit. And finally, the tea culture. The tea culture is absolutely fantastic, because they will give you tea anytime, anywhere. Now, the Turkish coffee itself is very strong. It's pretty bitter and very earthy, kind of tastes like dirt, but it's worth trying. Definitely not for everyone though. The city can be quite chaotic depending on where you are, especially around touristy areas, but it's also very beautiful. I particularly enjoyed taking the ferry down the Bosphorus straight to the Asian side to go to Kadıköy and to Moda, and I really enjoyed walking down there, seeing all the cafes. There's a lot of interesting things, and that's one of the things about Istanbul in general. There's something interesting to look at, to see in every corner. Taking the ferry over, I found, was a good replacement for just doing a Bosphorus boat tour, since we went over and came back around sunset. So being on the water, seeing the sunset, especially like seeing the mosque and all the buildings in the background, it's made for a stunning sunset. I mean, really, really uniquely beautiful. And it was cool, like, especially once you get on the bridge near Karaköy on the European side, seeing all the fishermen hang out on the bridge. There's just, man, there's a lot to see, a lot of beauty here. As I walk now inside the promenade of Galataport, which is the cruise ship terminal, just want to share a couple miscellaneous things on the city. For one, around the touristy areas, it's definitely not cheap. I think you get closer to the main attractions and some of the areas of Karaköy, it can get pricey. I love the music culture here and the dancing. Turkish people love to dance. They love music. There's so many varieties of music. They love their local Turkish music. Some cats run the city. There are like 12 cats on every corner. The locals love them. They're not homeless. They're communal cats and well fed. They're very friendly. So it's kind of funny to see them just walking around and just help manage the population of rats. So that's kind of a cool little quirk of seeing all these beautiful cats roaming around. And finally, just to round this all out, Istanbul is an incredible city. It's hard to even call it a city. It's like a massive cosmopolitan area, and really has a little bit of everything. I'm really grateful to have been able to spend some time here, experience some Turkish culture, especially after going to Bodrum and Izmir. Turkey is an amazing place. I hope one day I can return and go to Cappadocia. But Istanbul, I mean, this is a place that you can stay in a long time and just experience a lot of culture. There's amazing tourist attractions, but also just so many cool neighborhoods to explore. And it really feels like, in a lot of ways, as I mentioned, since this is a place where East meets West, the heart of the world, the African civilizations that came up to Mesopotamia, and then all the empires that lived here. So there's just so much historical importance and so much interesting history to learn here. So yeah, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed my unfiltered thoughts on this incredible, dynamic, beautiful, interesting city. And I appreciate you watching, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. See you.